Hello again, my name is Justin Millette. The theme of today's episode is removing no from your vocabulary, and our very special guests have some amazing stories in that area, ranging from their experience with disabilities to service dogs. Today's guests are Pam Easler and Jacqui Lowman.
My name is Pamela Easler. I am the administrative specialist for the College of Arts and Sciences. I think I inspire myself. Does that sound bad?
Not at all.
I don't know. I just get inspired by lots of different things. I might watch a movie and get inspired, or read something and get inspired. I get inspired by strange things, fabric, art.
Positive person in general, then.
Yarn. I'll look at something and get inspired by it. I don't know. Kind of a creative inspiration, I think.
Perfect. That's a good mindset to take in anything. And how about you, Dr. J?
So I'm Dr. J, mother of Saint and Dusty. It's kind of dark, so you probably can't see them, but they're back there. I am a teacher at UMPI, University of Maine Presque Isle. So that's who I am, what I do, and what inspires me. I think what inspires me is things that need change. And so maybe motivate would be a better word, but when I see things that are wrong, I get very energized and I want to make a difference. I want to rally the troops and make them better. So I think that's what motivates me and keeps me going. So I'm not creative and artistic like Pam. It's just like I enjoy the beauty. I think and I think like we snuck away for 4 hours on Monday and took a ride up to Fort Kent and came down Route 11 and look off, the beautiful, the earth, the landscape. And so lots of beauty in my life, lots of good things in my life. So I guess there's a difference. So that would be the inspiration. The motivation is, there's a lot that's not right and it needs to get better.
The work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And thank you for that. Now, since this is a big goal of this podcast is to educate people about service dogs in the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if we could start, maybe Dr. J's been on the podcast before, so maybe a story or a tidbit, something about service dogs that you first remember, Dr. J, that you haven't shared before. And try to think back to like the earliest, even before you had Saint or Dusty, your encounters with a service dog.
So I don't recall what I said in our last podcast, but I did not realize, I think probably like a lot of people, I grew up and a service dog was a police dog. They used to use the term police dog interchangeably with German Shepherd. And it was seeing eye dogs. That was it. That's what we knew. And it wasn't until I became much older that I realized that there were all kinds of service dogs. It wasn't just that. And so that was very motivating. And then I realized that some of what they could do, and that there was a service dog out there for me. So, but probably from the time I was a little kid, I knew about guide dogs.
I know for me, it was a lot, like you said, the seeing eye dogs are the first service dogs you think of, or even it's a real physical thing to see that someone who doesn't have sight and then the dog guides them. So it's a real visual type of service dogs too, maybe compared to something like an alert dog where it's not as visual what they're doing for their partner every day.
And I think we would see it in the news, movies, things like that. And so I know that in general, it's not just German Shepherds anymore, even for vision dogs. A lot of them, because I get these, fundraising little cards and everything from Guide Dogs for the Blind and things like that. And they're using labs as well. But that was my earliest memory, I think, was the German Shepherds. And German Shepherds are so work-oriented. So it's like, and a vision dog has to be always on task. And so that's my early memory.
And Pam, did you have any experience or encounters with service dogs before working with Dr. J?
I did. There was a girl who was also visually impaired and was older than my daughter by probably, oh, maybe 7 or 8 years. And she got a service dog. So that was my first experience with a guide dog, was her dog. And so me and my daughter actually went, and we had known her, but we went and met her and her dog a few times on a few outings, like at a park and a few different places. So that was my first introduction to actually a guide dog. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about service dogs, and I think that's across the line. I mean, I think that's with people don't understand that it's different kinds of dogs, that they do lots of very, very different things, that it's very individualized for each person, depending what they need. The needs they vary greatly. And so that means that the dog's training varies to match that person. And one of the things I didn't know, I didn't know a lot, but one of the things I didn't know was that for someone who is blind or visually impaired, you think, oh, they're just going to get a dog, and the dog's just going to do everything for them. And it's really not that easy. The person who gets the dog actually has to have very, very good mobility skills first. So they have to have a lot of training and know how to do mobility, understand how to navigate, and learn a lot before they can even get the dog. And of course, when I learned about the things that Saint does, I was, not surprised because she's so wonderful, but, I don't think people realize how much she does, how many things that she does. They see her open doors, or they might just see her really sometimes doing nothing, just walking. But they don't realize that, like, all the things at home, the help with dressing and the picking things up. And so I think there's a lot people don't know about service dogs.
It would take an awful lot of training, even more, because they do, I don't know if you say cross-train, because sometimes they train the dog for more than one aspect. And so there are people who are blind and mobility impaired. And so then the dog has to really be like multi-trained. And it's just, I mean, it's really amazing. But I think about people you have to have an incredible bond with your dog, because that dog could be leading you to your death. I mean, if it's a good dog and everything, but you really have to trust. So as impaired as I am, I can see. And so if the girls are doing something, it's like, no, we don't want to go there. But I think, I mean, that's your mobility. That's a great point, Pam, because it's mobility.
That's why you have to also have mobility skills too, because you have to, even though you have a dog, you still have to know how to safely cross the street. You still have to know how to navigate a block and how to, figure out where you are by landmarks and things like that. So the dog's not doing everything for you.
No, and it's not just mobility. You have to be independent. You have to have cognitive skills. Correct. So you have to be able to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's why, one of the reasons why, and you have to be able to take care of the dog. There's a lot of work in taking care of it. So you have to be able to take it outside. You have to be able to groom it. You have to have the money and the means to be able to transport it to the vet. And I mean, there's a lot. And that's why my daughter doesn't have a guide dog right now. I mean, maybe someday she will, but right now she doesn't. And I think, that's part of it. She doesn't really have the mobility skills because she also has some like cognitive things going on with Asperger's, which prevents her from from mastering some of those mobility skills that she would need. But it's not only that, it's having the responsibility of taking care of that animal. I mean, she's taking care of a cat right now, but a cat's, I think, a little bit different.
A service dog is different from a dog. And so I know you said to me,
it's a lot more responsibility, and it's a lot more work, and she's not really able to do that right now.
You've said to me through the years, those dogs are treated better than most people.
Sure they are.
My girls, yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, they get their special food and they get their, you have to take them to, I mean, these dogs are a huge investment in time and money, and they're not easily replaced. So they're very precious. You have to make sure that you're taking really good care of them.
Like you said, each case is so different. So there's so much work that has to go in because not only the people are different, but the dogs too. They have their
Correct.
own personalities and they have to click and work together for so long so each can learn the other's intricacies.
And so they do a good job matching, but all the matches don't take. Sometimes the chemistry is just not there. And
Right.
so, yeah.
And the you both mentioned already the absence of knowledge, or maybe like how more people, if they knew about service dogs, what they were capable of, how that could help them and help other people with disabilities. That goes hand in hand a lot with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which protects service dogs and really has all the rules around them. What do you guys know? I'm sure you both know plenty about the American with Disabilities Act, and not specifically to service dogs, but how it protects people in general.
Take it, Pam.
Well, it's really all about just creating equality, leveling the playing field for everybody. It's not about special treatment. It's just about, making sure that everybody has the same access, everybody has the same chance. Um, and, it's before this, kids who had disabilities would just not even be allowed in school, and now schools have to have them there. They have to provide an individualized plan. They have to meet their needs. It's mandated by law. And I think, without that, as with everything, if businesses and everything were not mandated by law, if there was not actually laws to make them do it, they wouldn't do it. And that cuts out a lot of people. I mean, that takes away, if you can't get into a building, if you can't read something, if you can't, hear, and you don't get an interpreter, that cuts you off from so many things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like you said, it's you're starting at a disadvantage from everyone else even before you even start, because it's not for you. You know what I mean? The like you said, that level playing field. Some people, it's not a head start, it's not special privilege. It's just some people need that to be given the same opportunity as everyone else.
Correct.
When you were saying that, I had this image because I have it in my office. I know, Pam, you've seen it. Justin, you've seen it. The cartoon about the people trying to look over the fence
Mm-hmm.
and the boxes. But as you're talking about that, I'm thinking it's not that people with disabilities are on the ground. They're in a hole, so they're not even on the ground. And so it's that they have so far that they need to go. And people say, I mean, they say some pretty stupid things like, oh, it must be nice to be able to go in a special door. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I would be happy to go in your door if I could.
For
So,
sure.
yeah.
What you said was great. How you said more education and more awareness will help, because that was what I wanted to talk about next, where that needs to grow. Pam, you must see some areas where you'd like the ADA to grow as well, or maybe some people that aren't quite encapsulated by it yet.
Right. Well, and I think that there are laws in place. I think the issue is that people have to fight to get them enforced, or to have them implemented. And the people who have to do that are the people who need those accommodations, which is really hard and really puts an extra burden on them in their life, because they have enough to deal with, and then you have to fight your way, all the time. And that just gets very draining, and that just is really an additional burden that shouldn't be placed on people, but it is, because if they don't do it, no one else will. And I mean, I think the laws are good, and I think that the laws are clear, um, but it's enforcing it, and sometimes it's difficult. It's like our campus, our buildings are old, and they were all built, long before ADA. So it takes sometimes, you know, sometimes it takes some thought on how you're going to do this. And some of our buildings are sorely lacking still. I mean, they've tried to make accommodations by putting in, a ramp, but it's not ideal because it's steep and it's not easy to navigate. And they've tried doors that open and close, but they're not always perfect. I mean, they try, but it's really hard with some of these older buildings and getting people aware. Sometimes they think that just, okay, well, we're just going to stick a ramp here, but they haven't actually tried to navigate that ramp or use it. So I think it's a combination of enforcing those laws and making sure that when they do make the adaptations that they have someone try them or have some input from someone who uses them so that they really do, make it easy and accommodate and not just become another frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, that the only people who are fighting are the people who shouldn't have to be the ones fighting because they're the ones living through the challenges already. If you said it great. If they're not going to do it, nobody else will.
It's the way the law is set up in terms of employment. And so UMPI the University of Maine system has an ADA coordinator. It's a position. And it's fairly new, within the last maybe 5 years for the whole system. But it's incumbent on the person to come forward and say, this is a problem for me. And it's really difficult to be that guy, because that there are people in the group who are thinking, oh, would you just shut up? Everything would be fine. Why do you have to make a big deal of things? And so you do have to come forward, and you do have to, and as Pam's saying, old buildings and scarce resources. And it can be really difficult because you're like, oh man, I don't want to make, always be that voice, always be that squeaky wheel. But I think that people, if you're lucky enough to have that job and have that opportunity to speak, that you're doing it for other people. You're not just doing it for you. It's
for all the other squeaky wheels behind you, so they don't have to squeak.
Who don't have the opportunity to squeak.
Right.
You don't, because people from the community that try to come to campus, they wouldn't know who to talk to. They're not going to know who to go to. So I think Pam makes a great point. You have to be, the people with the issues have to be the people to push them forward. And sometimes you just get really tired of doing it. But you can't give up.
No, absolutely. You can't get out, because then it's not going to happen at all. Like Pam said, if you don't do it, nobody else will. So
I remember when my daughter was in school, and they would see me coming in, and I could see them all going, oh no, Mrs. Easler is here again.
You need to expand on that, because I've told the kids about this. So please expand on. I'm taking over. You need to
because
talk a bit about that.
I would go in and catch them. I would go in and catch them doing stuff. Like, I went in one time and I went through I went into her, she had like a little special workroom, and I went into the special workroom and I went through her work, and I looked and I'm like, well, why isn't this in Braille? This is not in Braille. Why? And I would catch them, and I would actually confront the aide or the teacher and say, well, what's going on? Why is this like this? Why isn't she doing her own work? Show me where she's doing it. And I would just kind of raise a little bit of a ruckus. And so when I came in, they're just like, oh no, Mrs. Easler's here. They would have just soon I just stayed away because I was like a kind of a pain.
When your daughter was first in school, the first couple of years, was it the same sort of injustice, or was it more so as she got older and really the curriculum was more tailored towards the other kids?
Oh my, it was from day one. I remember when she went to kindergarten and her kindergarten teacher said to me, I think kindergarten, like there was a lot of parents around at kindergarten, saying goodbye to their students, bringing them in. And I was there. I had rode the bus with her for the first couple of days to get her used to the bus. So I was there and her teacher saw me and her teacher's like, and I went to leave and her teacher's like, well, what do you mean? Aren't you staying? The teacher wanted me to stay with her all day at school. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not staying. I'm leaving. So the teacher was just panicked. You could see they just, you know, it was right from day one, all through. I mean, it was that way the whole way through.
Dr. J told us that you actually made books for your daughter out of Braille. So
Yep.
because the school wasn't willing to, or
Well, there just wasn't a lot of Braille books here, and we didn't have a teacher for a long time. So I was trying to do what I could to teach her. And so we had a Braille labeler, and she also had a Perkins Brailler. And so you could put the paper, it was like sticky paper, almost like a contact paper. So you could put that in the Perkins Brailler and Braille words, and then cut them out. And what I did was I put them in books, so regular print books, like for kids, with just a few words in it, the little books. And I put the Braille, sticky Braille, like labels over the print, so we could do the books together. So I knew what the words were that she was reading with her fingers, and I would say the words to her. It's just like when you read to a child, because that really reinforces the reading and what the words are, and it's how you start to teach a child to read. And so she would, touch the Braille, and I would be able to follow along with her with the print, and we would do books like that. And with kids who have to read Braille, it's all about touch and sensitivity with the fingers. So we did a lot of like feely books. Like I would Braille the word fuzzy and then glue something fuzzy in the book, a pom-pom or whatever, and make her books and things like that. One for the touch sensitivity, just to get that. And also it's fun, something fun, because she liked those types of things. So yeah, it's how we started in the very, very beginning, to introduce her to books and Braille and what reading was.
and you've done a lot of research, obviously, because you mentioned you met the other child who had the sight dog. Are there any other resources that you've looked into for her that maybe didn't work out, they weren't a good fit?
Well, there was not a lot of resources here, and they were very intermittent. Like we had a mobility instructor, but that mobility instructor did all of Aroostook County, and the state of Maine funding is always an issue. So staff and people resources was always hard to come by. Any equipment that she needs is terribly expensive, hard to come by. While she was in school, it was provided for, but once they become adults, it's a lot harder. And so there were some things that she got when she was in school. It was easier when she was in school because they had to provide certain things. So she did go down to Perkins School for the Blind. We took her down. She went down for a summer session. I think she went twice. She went for one session that was 3 weeks, and then she went again, that was 6 weeks. But of course, this was in Massachusetts. So, I mean,
How old was she at this time?
the first time she went, I think she was like in 5th grade, maybe. And then she was older, maybe 8th grade when she went the second time. And I mean, it was a good experience. They're really good down there, but I mean, it's difficult because it's expensive, but the school did pay for that, but it's expensive, and it's a hard trip. It's it's a lot of, it's an ordeal to get there, and hard for her being away from home like that. And but she did well, and she did learn quite a bit there. It's more intensive. They had a lot of intensive training and things for her there. So there was a couple things there. And she went to the Carroll Center too for, I think it was like a week, which is a place in Connecticut that does training and rehabilitation for adults. So she's had a few things like that in her life, but we didn't have around here. You just don't have the resource. We didn't have the resources. We had to do it. That's why I ended up staying home. I left my job when she was 6 months old, and I stayed home with her for 7 years until she was 7. And then I went back for 3, and then I ended up getting done again. And when I did work after that, it was basically around her school schedule so that I could still be here, because I just found that she just needed so much intensive, one-on-one work and someone to work with her and do all of those things that needed to be done.
And now, you said she's living on her own. She has an apartment.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. She has an apartment. She lives on her own. Yep.
So that's obviously a testament to your teaching. She's able to do that. I imagine there's a lot.
Well, and to her, she's come a long way. She's come a long way. Been a quite a road, but uh, but she's doing well. I mean, she really is. So
Yeah, anytime you hear a story like that, there's Dr. J shared a little bit of that with us, but there's so many details to hear from you, especially about like you staying at home and going in and actually fighting those battles with the people at the school. It's something, as we've said over and over in this podcast already, you shouldn't have to do it, but you do just to get those human rights that every other child should. It's and the buildings, everything with the ADA is still so relatively new that the millions and millions of people who were disabled before this, there it's mind blowing just to think about the people who were left out and are still left out.
yeah.
Even in this
Well, and
better.
that's one of the big things really is that, I had to really learn, the rights, what rights you have, what the school has to provide. I mean, because if they don't come knocking at your door and say, oh, you have all these rights and your child is entitled to this, this, and this, you know, they don't tell you that. And frankly, a lot of places don't want you to know. So you really have to, people really have to, and it's unfortunate that it's put on them, or their families, but you really have to educate yourself and know, what the laws are, what your rights are, what your resources are, what your recourse is if, you know, if you're not getting what you need, if you want a job and you're not, your employer's not making those accommodations, where do you go? What do you do? If you need to go into a store and you can't get in, where do you go from there? You need to know what your rights are and where to go with those rights, and where to advocate and who to contact, to work on those things and try to get them improved, because it's hard. It's like when we paved our way through the school system, and I thought, well, maybe it'll make it easier for the next family or the next child that comes through. And I think it's the same way for what Dr. Lowman is doing, is she's doing all this work, and yeah, it's unfair that she has to be the one to do it. But, hopefully in teaching everyone and working on this, it won't be so hard for the next person coming through.
You said a word there, unfair. I think people with disabilities really don't think of themselves as unfair, because if you had that mindset every day, you wouldn't be able to get anything done. The
Right.
situation in period is unfair. So it's all you can do is work and go do that next thing and fight for what you deserve.
Right.
I often
And it's not easy. I mean, Dr. Lowman, she you don't always want to be that person. I didn't really like, going into a meeting and being the way I was, but and I was professional, but I was also not going to let them steamroll me and, and just shut me up. And no, nobody likes to have to do that. Nobody likes to have to be assertive or to advocate. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And people may not like you, and it was never anything personal. I never had anything personal against anyone or any, or the school system or whatever. It was not personal. I just felt like, this is business. This is not, I may be in a meeting with you and I may, tell you that you're not doing what you need to do and that you're not following the law. But when we get out in the hallway, I can certainly say, oh, hi, how are you doing? And leave that behind. So it's not a personal thing, it's business.
Sometimes people misunderstand. So with Pam, it was, okay, she's doing this for her daughter. With me, I think there are certainly a chunk of people, it's like, oh, it's all about you. And as I say to Pam all of the time, Pam's my friend, this isn't for me because I'm going to be okay. I can schlep along. If it were for me, I wouldn't be advocating that we need to get in some of these buildings that I hardly ever go in. And so it's for the people that are going to follow, my children yet to come. So with
restriction to that either. There's no age restriction to that discrimination either. Some people can be very well educated people, scholars in their fields, and still have that almost like envy for other people who get what they consider to be privileges.
Yes, they was like, oh, it's a gift. You got this gift. Did you really earn that your college degrees? It's like, well, yes, I did. They didn't give it to me because they felt sorry for me. And so sometimes the people that, I think that's a great point. It's not about having initials after your name. It's not about having these advanced degrees, because people can be woefully uneducated about that. It needs to be a partnership, not just with you and the dog, but with the people, that are kind of trying to get the dog to address your needs. And so it's like you need to listen, because even if it's a little child, we know our lives, we kind of know what we need to do. And so I think that is certainly a concern for me, that because otherwise you're being, it's an old-fashioned word, but you're being kind of patronizing. No, you think you know what you need, but we know what you need. No, you don't. And so I have a little scrappy thing.
Both of you would probably say it was 100% worth it. Was there ever a time where either of you even doubted or second guessed what you were doing?
For me, no, there was no choice. I mean, because I even heard things like, well, maybe your daughter just won't be a reader. And I'm like, she will read, no matter what I have to do, this kid is going to be a reader, because I knew without being able to read, that would just cut her off so much, because I was an avid reader, and I mean, reading opens your whole world. So without that, I was like, that's just not going to happen. And I was adamant that was not going to happen. And so for me, there was no giving up. And for Dr. Lowman, I'm sure too, it's your life. You can't give up. I mean, you can't.
You can't. And so we shared in another podcast about when I had the aneurysm and almost bled to death. And so I didn't have doubts before that, but certainly since that, there was a reason I survived. Obviously they stopped the bleeding, but that also was a second chance. And so, I've got a lot of things I need to do for other people. I can't do those without, I shouldn't say I can't do it without a service dog. I'd have to have a person come and live with me all the time and take care of me. And I don't, people are okay, but I don't, it's not the same.
There's nobody that wants to do that, Jacqui.
No, so I don't have people lined up to do that, and I don't want them to line up to do that. And so my dogs are a part of me. We joke and say I'm becoming a centipede, because I've got 16 legs, because I've got 2, and then the girls, so that makes 10, and then Karma has 6 wheels, and so I've only got 16 legs so far, but who knows? And so it's freedom, it's independence, but it's the ability. It's not just freedom and independence for its own sake. It's not like, oh, I can just like sit around and read all those books. It's freedom and independence so that we can go out and advocate and work, because it is hard. I don't want it to be so hard for other people. It shouldn't be that hard. I'm just, crazy stubborn, but I don't want other people to go through that. There's no point in that. So it's really, really motivating. So it's not about me. It's about this gift that I got, second chance. And so let's really use that gift and make things better for other people. There will be, Umpy's going to be overrun. We might have 2 people in wheelchairs. I mean, who knows? And so I shouldn't be so rare. Where are the people in wheelchairs on plane? Well, not most people are on planes right now, but going to a conference, going any place. I want an army. There's going to be an army in back of me. No, I'm joking, but I have this incredible gift of a second chance on life. And my dad, who said, it's wrong, you got to fight for it. And so I don't know that a lot of people had those gifts, those benefits. And so you got a gift, you got to use it.
Like you said, when you see the work that needs to be done, that's what you got to do.
So I can never die. I have to live to be at least 100 because there's just like, and so I always say at Umpy, it's like, I can't retire because you got to really clean up your act. And so if you want me to leave, get a lot better. And so they'll go in someday and I'll be sitting at my computer with a big smile upright, but I won't be in my body anymore. But hopefully that won't be for a long time.
And as we know, no 2 situations are perfectly alike and they're all completely different. But because of your guys's, both of you, your tenacity, you're willing to keep fighting for what you deserve, or Pam, in your case, your daughter deserves. That's why you guys were such great guests to have on this episode of not accepting that no, removing can't from your vocabulary. And in closing, I would, if possible, would either of you have a piece of advice or maybe some words of encouragement for anyone else in a similar situation to yours?
Educate yourself, and know what your rights are, know the laws, and don't accept discrimination, don't accept things not being accessible, don't accept the limits that people are trying to put on you. Just say, no, I know my rights, I know the law, and I deserve to have that equal playing field.
It isn't, because you're saying what I deserve, what Pam's daughter deserves. This is what everyone deserves. And so this is about social justice. These are human rights. We've talked about this in a previous podcast, and Pam and I have talked about this a lot through the years. This isn't about being less than. Oh, you're less than, there's something defective about you, there's something wrong with you. So you lose those human rights. Everyone's got these rights. These are rights for people to have. And so you're not asking people, you're saying with dignity, no, I deserve to get from A to B. I deserve to be able to read, to have a life, to live my life to the fullest. Those are rights that everyone has. The fact that you can't do it the way that someone else does it, great. That's what makes the world go round. And so I would say to people, and I think it's easier as you get a little older. When you're very, very young, it's like, do I deserve to say this? You do deserve it because you are a human being, and all beings have these. There's a lovely thing called the Declaration of Human Rights, and I carry a copy of it with me all the time. And so there are basic human rights. And so what Pam has fought for, what the girls and I fight for, it's human rights. This isn't anything, we're not asking for favors. We're asking for people to be able to live to their potential. And everyone has that right. So I'd say, try not to think about, I'm asking for special treatment. You're asking for equity. That's not special treatment. You're asking for
You
equity.
shouldn't have to ask for anything.
Absolutely. And so you're quietly, persistently asserting, no, we need to do this. This is what's the law. This is what's right. And and so you can also hit people up at the bottom line. When I was going through a challenging time, Voc Rehab has been amazingly good to me. Sometimes not so. Sometimes it's been a little bit of a saga. And so, do you really think that you deserve this? So, like, let's look at it this way. If I can work, I'm a taxpayer. I could take care of my mother, take care of my dogs. If I can't work, then all those good people in Maine have to take care of me. And so it's not just the right thing to do, but it's also the smart thing to do. Because the more, like with Nicole, the more independent people can be, the less they cost. I mean, that's kind of a crass way to put it. But
it also normalizes those people with disability in society. You said it's less than 10% of people with disability, or a quarter of people with disability.
26%, the CDC, and they've got a few black eyes right now, but estimates that at least 26% of the population has a disability in the US. And that number will only grow because people are aging, and things that would have once killed people, like I think about terrible injuries, like even in war, people survive these. And so more and more people, and the people coming back from war were a big factor in the ADA and disability rights. Because you could like lock people away in the attics, but then you've got heroes coming back, and that was a tough. Ooh, like you lost your limbs for us, but now we're gonna put you out to pasture. So that helped a lot, and so it is about people. Everyone's got value. Everyone has something to contribute, and we need to do better because we can't afford to waste people.
Absolutely. And nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves.
No, and society doesn't deserve it. It's like, my left foot, Christy Brown, the guy that had cerebral palsy, became an internationally known painter and writer. He could only control his left foot. And so, but these people, he had gifts, and he was brilliant, and he was able to get them out. Everyone's got something. And so as teachers and human beings, we need to help people find those gifts.
I think that's an excellent point to end on. Everybody has something to offer, and that's why it's worth fighting for.